You know that specific sound a bespoke Italian leather briefcase makes when it hits a mahogany conference table? That heavy, muffled thud. I lived for that sound. For 14 years, I was the ghost in the machine at Barlow Group. I was the senior strategy director who turned red ink into black. I was the fixer who knew where all the corporate bodies were buried. I wasn't just an employee. I was the structural integrity of the entire firm. Gerald Barlow, our CEO, called me his North Star. He promised me over a glass of scotch at the Harvard Club that the chief strategy officer chair would be mine when he moved up to chairman. I believed him. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was assuming that competence still mattered in a world run by bloodlines and veneers. The end did not look like a disaster. It looked like a 30-year-old man named Logan Barlow. Logan was Gerald's nephew. He had an expensive business degree and a sense of entitlement that could peel paint. Gerald brought him in as a special projects consultant, which is corporate code for needing to give a family member a salary, so they stopped trying to become a DJ in Berlin. "Nolan," Gerald had said, leaning over my mahogany desk with that used car salesman grin. "Take Logan under your wing. Show him the ropes. It is good leadership practice for when you take the big chair." So I did. I showed him the ropes. I showed him the financial modeling software. I showed how to read a profit and loss statement. I spent 9 months running a corporate daycare center for a grown man who thought synergy meant everyone getting along. I fixed his slide decks at 2 in the morning. I rewrote his emails so he did not sound like a semi-literate social media influencer. I was polishing the blade that would soon find a home between my shoulders. The betrayal happened on a Thursday, at the second quarter all-hands meeting. The entire company was packed into the main auditorium, fidgeting with their phones, waiting for whatever buzzword salad Gerald had tossed together. I sat in the front row, wearing a tailored charcoal gray blazer. Gerald was on stage, pacing back and forth. His hands looked sweaty. He looked like a man trying to sell a monorail to a town that had already been scammed by a monorail. "We need fresh vision," Gerald bellowed, his voice echoing off the acoustic ceiling tiles. "We need agility. We need the kind of forward-thinking leadership that understands the digital native landscape." My stomach dropped. Digital native landscape. The only thing Gerald knew about digital natives was that they did not like his Facebook posts. "That is why," Gerald continued, gesturing grandly to the wings of the stage, "I am thrilled to announce our new Chief Strategy Officer. Please welcome Logan Barlow." The silence in the room was a physical vacuum. It sucked the air straight out of my lungs. I watched as Logan bounced onto the stage, wearing a bright pastel suit, waving to a room full of people who had been working at the company longer than he had been alive. He grabbed the microphone. "Hi guys," Logan squealed. "Oh my God, I am so pumped to pivot this company into the future. We are going to disrupt everything." I did not blink. It felt like my blood had been replaced with liquid nitrogen. I looked at Gerald. He caught my eye for a split second, then immediately looked away, feigning sudden interest in Logan's shoes. He knew. The coward knew exactly what he had done. He had taken my 14 years of loyalty, my 75-hour weeks, the deals I had saved, and handed them to a nephew whose hardest decision in life so far had been which filter to use on his brunch photo. The chief financial officer, a man named Peter Henderson, who had the personality of a spreadsheet tab but knew quality when he saw it, looked at me. His face was a mask of horror. He knew who actually did the work. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I did not storm the stage. Instead, a cold, metallic calm settled over me. It was the kind of calm you see in the eye of a hurricane right before the roof gets ripped off. I stood up. I smoothed my suit jacket. I walked out of the auditorium while Logan was midway through a sentence about holistic brand vibes. I walked straight to my office. I did not pack a box. I sat down at my computer and typed 2 sentences to Gerald Barlow, Chief Executive Officer, from Nolan Vance. Subject: resignation. Congrats to Logan. I resigned effective immediately. I hit send. Then I printed it, signed it with a pen that cost more than Logan's lease payment, and walked it over to Human Resources. The Human Resources director, a woman named Clara Jenkins, who lived in perpetual fear of her own shadow, looked at the paper, then at me. "Nolan," she whispered, her eyes wide. Are you sure? Gerald will flip. We have the board meeting next week. Who is going to prep the presentation deck?" Logan is the chief strategy officer, I said, my voice smooth, devoid of any jagged edges. I am sure he has a vision for the deck. Something about pivoting, I believe, but he does not even know how to access the legal server, Clara stammered. Sounds like a strategic challenge, I said. Good luck, Clara. I walked out of the building. The air smelled like exhaust and rain, but to me, it smelled like sweet, intoxicating liberation. I hailed a cab. My phone started buzzing in my pocket. Gerald, once, twice, 15 times. I turned the phone off. They thought this was a tantrum. They thought I was just a bitter employee who would go home, drink a bottle of wine, and eventually come crawling back for a consulting gig. They thought the story ended here. But I wasn't just a strategist. I was the architect. And you don't fire the architect after you have moved into the house, especially not when the architect is the only one who knows the foundation is built on a sinkhole. I didn't just leave. I left a void. And I knew with the mathematical certainty of a well-balanced equation that nature abhors a vacuum. Logan was not ready for the job, but he was certainly ready for the fall. I intended to be there to make sure he hit every single branch on the way down. The next morning, I woke up to the silence of a clean calendar. No 6 in the morning alignment calls or 9 in the evening crisis meetings. It was disorienting, but then the cold rage kicked in. I had to go back one last time for HR exit protocols. I dressed for a funeral, all black severe lines, looking as sharp as a scalpel. When I walked into the lobby of Barlow Group, the receptionist, a sweet young kid named Oliver looked like he was about to cry. Mr. Vance, he whispered, looking around nervously. It is chaos upstairs. What happened, Oliver? I asked. Logan ordered a kombucha tap for the break room, but he accidentally canceled the Bloomberg terminal subscriptions to pay for it. Priorities, Oliver, I said, breezing past security. The elevator ride up to the 55th floor was the longest 45 seconds of my life. When the doors opened, the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't the hum of productivity anymore. It was the buzz of nervous energy. People were huddled in cubicles, whispering. When they saw me, the whispers stopped dead. Logan was in my office. He had not even waited for me to clear my things. He was sitting in my ergonomic chair, spinning back and forth, talking loudly on speakerphone. No, I don't care about the legacy accounts, Jordan, Logan was saying to his friend. They are so low energy. We need to pivot to digital assets or crypto. Are those still a thing? He saw me and stopped spinning. He did not look ashamed. He looked annoyed that I was interrupting his brainstorming session. Oh, hey, Nolan, he chirped. I was just vibing in here. The feng shui is way better than my cubicle. Hope you don't mind. Gerald said it was cool. It is all yours, Logan, I said, my voice flat. I am just here for my files. Totally, he said, waving a hand. Take whatever. Oh, and hey, no hard feelings, right? Uncle Gerald said you were totally chill about it. Totally chill. I looked at him. He was a child playing dress-up in a burning building. No hard feelings, I lied. Just a word of advice. Logan, watch the second quarter projections. The spreadsheet has a macro that auto-updates from the legal server. If you break the link, the SEC compliance triggers a red flag. His eyes glazed over. Macro? Is that like a diet thing? Something like that, I said. I walked over to the filing cabinet. This was the setup. I unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside, I left one thing behind, a single slate gray folder placed conspicuously on the empty desk surface. It was labeled Internal Audit and Governance Gaps, 2019 to 2025. Inside was a memo I wrote 8 months ago detailing anomalies in Gerald's vendor contracts. It wasn't illegal yet, just dangerous. A competent officer would fix it immediately. Logan wouldn't understand it, but someone else would eventually find it as proof that the issues were ignored. I went straight to HR. Clara Jenkins was sweating. Nolan, Gerald wants to do the exit interview himself, she said, wringing her hands. No, I said. Standard forms only. I sign the NDA regarding trade secrets. I take my accrued vacation pay, and I leave. You have an attorney on standby? She asked, looking at my paperwork. I am a strategist, Clara. I always have a contingency. I signed the papers. I didn't glance at the non-compete clause because I knew it was unenforceable under constructive dismissal pretenses. I wanted to watch the kingdom burn. As I walked to the elevator, Gerald burst out of his corner office. Nolan, he shouted. He looked disheveled. Don't be dramatic. Come back inside. We can create a role for you. Senior advisor to the chief strategy officer. We will keep your salary the same. I turned and looked at him. The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted me to be the brain while Logan wore the crown. He wanted me to do the work while his nephew took the credit. Gerald, I said, loud enough for the bullpen to hear. I don't do advisor roles, and I certainly don't babysit. You wanted a new direction. You got it. Enjoy the view. The elevator doors closed on his red, sputtering face. I walked out of the building with nothing but my briefcase. It felt light, but the weight of what I was carrying in my head, the codes, the clauses, the corporate secrets, was heavy enough to crush them all. I wasn't unemployed, I was just freelance. My first project was the demolition of Barlow Group. To understand how I was going to gut Gerald, you have to go back 4 years. It was a rainy November in 2022. We were courting Apex Capital, a private equity firm with pockets deeper than the Mariana Trench and a reputation for being about as warm and fuzzy as a velociraptor. We needed their money to scale. They needed a mid-market firm with high potential. It was a match made in capitalism. The negotiations were brutal. Apex Capital sent their lead counsel, a man named Gavin Sinclair. Gavin was a legend. He did not argue. He just stared at you until you questioned your own existence. Gerald was terrified of him. Gerald liked deals that happened on golf courses with handshakes and scotch. Gavin liked deals that happened in windowless rooms with 500-page contracts and blood oaths. I was the point person on the deal structure. Gerald could not be bothered with the boring legal details, so he delegated the redlining to me and our in-house counsel, a guy named Justin, who was mostly there to make sure we did not accidentally sell the building. It was 3 in the morning on the final night of negotiations. The conference room smelled like stale pizza and high-stakes desperation. Gavin was sitting across from me, looking fresh as a daisy. I was running on caffeine and spite. We need a safeguard, Gavin said, tapping his expensive pen on the table. Apex Capital is not in the business of funding vanity projects. If leadership fails, we need a trigger to protect our investment. Justin, our lawyer, bristled. We cannot give you a board majority. Gerald will not sign it. He needs to maintain control. Gavin looked at me. He knew I was the one actually building the model. Nolan, thoughts? I looked at the draft. I knew Gerald. I knew he was getting lazy. I knew he was already talking about bringing family into the business. And I knew that if things went south, I would be the one expected to fix it with no authority. I saw an opening. What if we add a conditional clause? I suggested, keeping my voice steady. Not a board majority by default, but a competency trigger. If specific metrics, corporate governance, or compliance drop below a certain threshold for 2 consecutive quarters, or if there is a material breach of governance protocols, Apex Capital gets temporary voting override to restructure the C-suite. Justin frowned. Gerald will not like the word restructure. Call it strategic realignment capability, I said. He loves the word strategic. He won't read the definition. Gavin's eyes narrowed. He saw exactly what I was doing. I was building a fire escape for the investors and a trapdoor for the CEO. Article 7D, Gavin said, a small, terrifying smile touching his lips. Strategic realignment due to governance failure or material mismanagement. We drafted it right there. The language was dense, buried in the middle of page 142 of the shareholder rights agreement. It defined material mismanagement broadly, including the hiring of unqualified executive personnel without independent board review and gross negligence regarding compliance reporting. The next morning, Gerald breezed in to sign the final documents. He was hungover, wearing sunglasses indoors. Did we get the valuation we wanted? He asked, hovering the pen over the signature line. Yes, I said. We got the money, and you still have 54% voting rights as long as the company performs. Gerald, it is all standard, just boring legal mumbo-jumbo. He laughed and scribbled his signature. He did not read a single word. He did not even flip the page. He was too busy thinking about the press release. Gavin shook Gerald's hand, but he looked at me. There was a moment of silent acknowledgement, a nod. Game recognized game. That document, the shareholder rights agreement, was currently sitting in a vault at Apex Capital. Gerald had a copy in his office safe, probably under a stack of golf magazines. He had forgotten Article 7D existed, but I hadn't. Article 7D wasn't just a clause, it was a kill switch. And Logan, with his kombucha taps and his complete lack of regulatory knowledge, wasn't just pressing buttons in the cockpit. He was dancing on the launch codes. All I had to do was wait for the material mismanagement to become undeniable. Based on what I had seen in his first 24 hours, I wouldn't have to wait long. It took exactly 4 weeks for the wheels to come off. I wasn't surprised by the crash. I was surprised by the velocity. It was like watching a toddler try to pilot a commercial airliner. I was sitting in my apartment, sipping coffee, and watching the stock ticker. Barlow Group was holding steady, but the internal chatter on the anonymous corporate message boards was a 5-alarm fire. Logan was busy disrupting. His first major initiative was something called Project Neon. Project Neon was a complete rebrand of our core logistics services. Barlow Group made its money providing reliable analytics to manufacturing firms. Logan decided this was stale. He wanted to pivot to what he called lifestyle logistics. He fired Sentinel Audit Group, the compliance firm we had used for 6 years to ensure our data handling met federal privacy standards. Why? Because Logan thought their lead auditor gave him bad vibes. He replaced them with Jordan's crypto consulting firm, which had no experience in logistics or federal compliance. Firing a certified compliance auditor for a friend was strike 1. It was a clear breach of our data security covenants. Strike 2 came in the form of the vendor town hall. Usually, I handled these. I would present the quarterly roadmap, reassure our suppliers, and talk about supply chain resilience. Logan decided to turn it into a vision quest. He showed up 20 minutes late wearing a headset microphone like he was doing a technology conference. He didn't have slides. He had a mood board. "We are moving away from rigid contracts," he told a room full of steel manufacturers and shipping magnates. "We want our partnership to flow like water. We want to operate on trust and blockchain vibes." The suppliers, men and women who dealt in tonnage and tariffs, stared at him blankly. Then the questions started. They wanted to know if the payment terms were changing. "Payment terms are so binary," Logan replied. "We are looking at a dynamic value exchange." Translation: "We are not going to pay you on time." Within 72 hours, 4 major vendors paused their shipments. They cited uncertainty regarding fiscal governance. I sat in my living room downloading every report, every leaked email, and every panicked text message. I was building a dossier. I had a folder on my laptop titled The Fall. It contained the email firing the compliance auditor, the transcript of the vendor town hall, and a screenshot of Logan's new organizational chart, which eliminated the risk management department and replaced it with a brand evangelist team. But the cherry on top was the second quarter financial revision. Because Logan did not understand the macro I warned him about, he had manually entered revenue projections into the master deck. He added a 0. Instead of projecting 5% growth, he projected 45%. He presented this to the internal leadership team. Gerald, desperate for a win, did not check the math. He signed off on it. They sent the preliminary guidance to the investors, including Apex Capital. It was fraud, accidental, incompetent fraud, but fraud nonetheless. In the corporate world, stupidity is not a legal defense. I looked at the document on my screen, the 45% growth slide. "Oh, Logan," I whispered to the empty room. "You just handed me the gun." It was time. I didn't want my old job back. I wanted justice. And justice in my world wore a bespoke suit and carried a very thick briefcase. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had not called in years. "Gavin Sinclair's office," the assistant answered. "This is Nolan Vance," I said. "Tell Gavin I have an update on Article 7D, and tell him to bring the good wine." The wine bar was called LB the Oblivion. It was dark, expensive, and quiet enough to plan a hostile takeover. I was sitting in a corner booth, a glass of wine untouched in front of me. On the table sat the physical copy of my dossier, bound in nondescript black leather. Gavin Sinclair walked in at 8:15 in the evening. He still looked like a shark that had learned to walk upright and wear designer suits. He slid into the booth opposite me. His eyes scanned the room for eavesdroppers before locking onto mine. "Nolan," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I hear you received the preliminary second quarter guidance from Barlow Group yesterday." I said, skipping the pleasantries. "Gerald is projecting 45% growth in a stagnating logistics market. It's a miracle," Gavin noted dryly. It is a typo, I said, sliding the binder across the table. Open to tab 3. He opened it. He saw the side-by-side comparison. My original model showing 5% growth and Logan's Project Neon slide showing 45% with the manual entry clearly highlighted. He broke the formula link I explained, I said. He typed in a number that felt right to him. Gerald signed off without an audit. Gavin stared at the page, his jaw tightening. If this is true, they just submitted false guidance to a majority shareholder. That is securities fraud under federal regulations. It is material mismanagement, I said. Turn to tab 4. Tab 4 was the email chain regarding the firing of the compliance auditor and the hiring of Logan's crypto consulting friend. Gavin read it, closing his eyes for a brief moment as if praying for patience. He fired a certified auditing firm for a vibe mismatch and replaced them with an uncertified entity owned by a personal friend, Gavin whispered. Which triggers the vendor integrity clause in the investment agreement, I added. It is a breach of covenant, Gavin. He closed the binder and placed his hand on top of it. Why are you giving me this, Nolan? You want the Chief Executive Officer chair? Is that the play? We invoke Article 7D, decapitate Gerald and install you as the savior. I took a sip of my wine. No, I don't want the chair. I don't want to fix the mess he made. I have spent 14 years fixing Gerald's messes. I am done being the janitor. Then what do you want? I want the record corrected, I said. I want them to know that competence isn't hereditary. And I want to watch the look on Gerald's face when he realizes that the boring legal mumbo-jumbo he ignored is the thing that ends him. Gavin smiled. Article 7D requires an emergency board session. We can call it for governance concerns. Thursday. The board meets on Thursday. Thursday it is, Gavin said. You are thorough, Nolan. You always were. I built the house, Gavin. I know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. The weekend before the Thursday board meeting felt tense. Logan had announced Project Neon would launch on Monday. The internal leaks were tragic. Apparently, the new branding featured a logo that looked highly questionable, and the tagline was logistics for the soul. On Monday morning, the launch happened. It was a disaster. The website crashed because Logan forgot to pay server hosting fees. The new dynamic pricing model confused the automated systems of our 4 biggest clients, causing a backlog of $18 million in orders that simply vanished into the digital ether. By Monday afternoon, the stock price had dipped 6%. A warning. I received a text from Peter Henderson, the CFO. It is a bloodbath, Nolan. Gerald is panicking. Logan is crying in the break room. Are you coming back? I did not reply. At 5 in the afternoon, the bomb dropped. Gavin sent a formal notice to the board of directors. Emergency board meeting requested by Apex Capital. Agenda, review of governance protocols, and second quarter guidance discrepancies. Gerald must have seen the email and laughed, too arrogant to realize his control was slipping away. At 7 in the evening, Gerald called me. Nolan! He sounded breathless. I know you are gone, but we have a board meeting tomorrow. Apex Capital is being difficult. I need you to look over the deck. I can pay you a consulting fee, double your old rate. The desperation leaked through the phone. He wanted me to save him, to hide the 45% growth lie. I am busy. Gerald, I said, chopping vegetables for dinner. Busy doing what? You are unemployed. I am strategizing, I said. Nolan, please, Logan is overwhelmed. He needs operational support. Just come in tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I will be there, Gerald, I said. Oh, thank God. I knew you were a team player. I didn't say I was coming to help. I just said I would be there. The stage was set. Thursday morning dawned gray and rainy. I arrived at the Barlow Group building at 9:30 in the morning. My badge hadn't been deactivated yet, another oversight by Logan. I went straight to the executive floor. The boardroom had glass walls. I saw some inside. Gerald pacing, Logan scrolling on his phone. The other board members looked grim. I stood in the hallway. Peter, the CFO, saw my white suit. Nolan, what are you doing? Just watching the market correct itself, Peter, I said. You should go inside. You don't want to miss this. Then the elevator doors opened and Gavin Sinclair stepped out with his team and a forensic accountant. Gavin adjusted his tie and walked toward the boardroom doors. The executioner had arrived. Gavin pushed open the glass doors. The conversation died instantly. Gavin, good to see you, Gerald said, putting on a fake smile. We were just discussing the minor hiccups with the launch. Growing pains, right? Gavin did not sit down. This is not a discussion about growing pains, Gerald. This is a formal invocation of Article 7D of the Shareholder Rights Agreement. Logan looked up from his phone. Article what? Gavin ignored him. He pulled a thick document flagged with red tabs from his briefcase and slid it down the mahogany table. It stopped right in front of Gerald. Notice of leadership disqualification proceedings, Gavin stated. Gerald stared at the paper. Disqualification? You can't do this. I have 54% voting rights. I own this company. Not under conditions of material mismanagement, Gavin replied. We have evidence of securities fraud, compliance gross negligence, and destruction of governance controls. Gerald went pale. That was a draft. It was submitted as a binding disclosure, Gavin said. And since the numbers were manually entered to override the formula, it constitutes intent to deceive. We are freezing all executive authority. An external audit team is on its way up. Security will escort the current C-suite off the premises. But Logan did the deck, Gerald stammered, blaming Logan. He prepared the numbers. Gavin turned to Logan, who looked small. I thought 45% looked better, Logan whispered. You manifested a federal crime, Mr. Barlow, Gavin said coldly. You can't do this, Gerald shouted. Nolan, where is Nolan? He can explain this. He knows the model. Nolan isn't here to save you, Gerald, Gavin said. He is the one who documented the fire while you were handing out matches. Gerald froze. He looked around and saw me standing outside the glass wall in my white suit. I wasn't smiling, I was just watching. The betrayal he felt was palpable, but it was nothing compared to the betrayal he had served me. All in favor of suspension, Alistair Montgomery called out. Every hand went up. Motion carried. Security escorted them out. Gerald stopped near the door. You built this trap, he whispered. I built a safety net for the company, Gerald, I said quietly. You just decided to jump without checking if you were caught. Once they were gone, Alistair Montgomery cleared his throat. He looked at me in the doorway. Mr. Vance, join us. The board offers you the Chief Strategy Officer position with triple equity. It was the validation and the title I had wanted weeks ago, but the hunger was gone. I decline, Alistair, I said. I am done being the janitor. Then who will run the strategy? Peter asked. Promote Fiona, I said. She actually read the compliance manual. I walked out, heels clicking on the marble floor. My first client at my new firm, Vance Strategic, was Apex Capital. We were going to look very closely at other failing companies. 3 months later, Gerald was retired, Logan was selling courses, and Barlow Group survived under Fiona. I tossed Gerald's note in the trash. Revenge is a deliverable.